In fact, I'm currently reading this book called The Anarchy. It's on the entire history of how East India Company came to India, and
Okay.
like a small company of few people actually built such a crack army and took over an entire nation, what was the richest nation in the world barely 300 years ago. How they subjugated that entire nation.
Wow.
So I mean, this I've been very curious about history increasingly. But how is it that if India was so good at so many things, and it
This is a
literally,
question I've always had. Am I going to get this answer here?
I mean, I would much rather point you to the books than
No, not from you, but I'm saying, will it give me a satisfactory answer to how this really happened? We were
Absolutely.
supposed to be not so easily enslaved by a few weak men.
Yes, absolutely. You will get a lot of the answers, but like I don't know if I said this, but history is a very deep subject.
Okay.
You have to read so many nuanced accounts. I mean, I'm reading this one book. It covers the period from 1600 when the Brits first arrived to probably 1800. By the time their power was, I mean, they were firmly in control of India.
Wow.
The real conquest began after that, actually. But the seeds of the conquest were sown in those 200
Right.
years. And I mean, even in that, there's so many perspectives. India is a huge nation. I mean, there's so many different areas, right?
Unimaginable to control a big country like India.
Right. And still it happened. It happened for a wide variety of reasons. And so just trying to understand these things, drives me. Like, what is it that really happened? In fact, I also before that read about the history of medieval India, which is a subject that we barely know about.
Yeah. I have no clue.
Yeah. I mean, neither did I. So at least that one book helped me understand much deeply what was really happening in the country, what kind of dynasties were there. In fact, you would probably not know that people say that Indians have never conquered anyone else, but that's not technically true. There was this Chola dynasty which actually sent ships and conquered most of Southeast Asia. So they were the first probably blue ocean navy that an Indian empire had, and they had a huge navy, and they actually conquered most of Southeast Asia, which is why there's such an Indian culture over there.
I've been to Bali, and you have all Mahabharata and Ramayana stories happening constantly every corner. You've got Arjuna Murti like this shooting arrow and stuff, and everyone has a dream of one time visiting India because it's the holy place where our gods took birth. I'm like, what? I'm sitting in Bali? Why are you guys saying all of this?
So in fact, in Bali, once negotiations were happening over the taking God's names. They were you Hindu, me Hindu, and they were trying to mark down the price. I was trying to reduce the price. They were increasing the price. So
they were like, yeah, Bhagwan ke naam pe,
exactly.
Ram ke naam pe, like Krishna ke naam pe.
Literally said, your God same, my God same. So,
Oh God.
But yeah, you get the feel that
No, I think I'm all up for religion and gods if they help me get better prices.
So that's really the trick. But there are so many things that have happened in the country that we don't even know about, and somewhere I think we have all been deeply colonized in a way that we increasingly look towards the West for references, for ideals. In fact, we are talking in English right now. It's not even our first language ideally. It's become our mode of communication. That's fine. But so many aspects about our culture are slowly being forgotten or sidelined.
So let's get into this part. Okay, you said something. We have been deeply colonized. Explain that.
So I feel that so many things that we do, we typically look towards the West for references or validation. Even when, for example, even when reading a book, you try to look at a Western author. Okay, there's some mark of credence over here. Versus, I mean, we would not typically turn to Indian authors. This is just one example.
Okay, I get
For
that.
the best standards in anything, we turn to the West first, rather than looking
Is that baseless, you think?
not baseless, but that's become the standard. At the cost of it, we say that none of our sources make any sense, or we would probably not look at Indian things. Whereas if you look at literature or medicine or history or culture, so many of our own ideas were so well ahead of time. We have had such a deep, rich past. So many brilliant things have come out of the country, but somehow those are ignored. Right? I mean, we are fascinated by maybe Italian architecture or French luxury or stuff like that, which is good. No problem in that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have forgotten, or rather put a blind eye to everything glorious and amazing about our own past. So somehow I feel that correction needs to happen. And personally, I am also trying to sort of get myself educated more and more about what's happened in our country.
And how, like, you've been reading history as one of your very interesting topics that you're pursuing. sometimes people question this, and this is a question we've always had as a child. पहले क्या हुआ है जान के क्या उखाड़ लूंगा मैं. I used to be that kid. And then I got interested in history myself. I haven't read this history bit a lot. I've only explored more recent history.
Right.
But I would love to get into until medieval at the very least.
Right.
Probably after this talk's inspiration. But what utility do you think has this history served to you? Like to pursue it with curiosity, you get to know a lot of facts.
Right.
You get to know what is it that you get to know that is helping you, and in what ways?
Right. I think there are tons and tons of benefits of reading.
And especially as a role of co-founder of Minimalist, let's also bring in that angle.
Right. I mean, if you actually read about what things have happened in the past, you can actually be much better prepared for the new novel circumstances that you will encounter in life. For example, a very small example, not very tangible also, but when COVID-19 happened, most of us felt that it was the biggest shock of our lives.
Right.
We had never seen anything like this. This is probably the first time the world is experiencing anything like this.
Yeah, that was a narrative.
Honestly,
Never before ever.
Yeah, but honestly, pandemics have been the most common feature of our history.
I only remember Spanish flu the 100 years ago that happened.
Exactly,
but has it been very widespread?
Yeah, I mean, ever since
humans have been sick forever.
Humans have been sick, and the moment humans domesticated plants and animals,
Right.
and viruses started going from animals into our bodies, and our immune systems didn't have defenses against them, pandemics have been a feature of human civilizations. So, I mean, there have been the Antonine plagues and whatnot. India has had so many of those plagues, and they have caused so much devastation and despair. So there was this book that I was reading when COVID started called Plagues and Peoples, and I realized that, oh man, pandemics have been so common. People have turned to religion and whatnot when pandemics have literally torn apart the
Must have
fabric.
been kind of seen as wrath of God. Kind of a phenomenon back then.
Exactly.
We had no better explanation.
No better explanation. In fact, quarantine. We tend to think that all of these concepts are modern, that we are very smart. Quarantine was actually started in 1300s. It was started when the Black Death. So Black Death was one of the major plagues that happened. By the way, all of this is not. I'm not like an authority on history, but these are all part of my readings. Yeah. But Black Death started in the 14th century, and I think somewhere in Croatia they had started the process of quarantining people who were coming from ships because they didn't want the plague to spread and destroy their entire populations. So there are so many of these things. For example, even civil services examinations. We think UPSC, IAS, all of this is very recent. 100-200 saal purana hoga. In China, it's been happening since the BCs.
Come on.
Yeah. They have had the
BCs.
Yes. So they have had the oldest recruitment system for bureaucrats. God. And so you have to really understand where our ideas come from. How did they emerge in the first place?